It really hits home how fast things move when you hear this.
Wow.
The author behind a book on, like, advanced AWS GitOps, they only heard about Kubernetes back in 2018.
Wow, yeah.
And AWS had already been around for, what, 12 years? It just shows how much there is to keep up with.
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant learning curve in cloud tech. That author's story probably resonates with a lot of folks.
For sure. Which kind of tees up today's deep dive perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
A listener sent us a link to a YouTube overview of this German Press ebook.
Okay.
It's called Practical GitOps Infrastructure Management using Terraform, AWS, and GitHub Actions. Big title, and it's 538 pages long.
That's hefty.
Yeah. So our mission today is basically to pull out the key stuff from this overview, the practical bits about GitOps infrastructure as code, AWS deployments.
Sounds useful. And it looks like the book covers a lot of ground IT workflows, how services evolved, infrastructure as code, GitOps concepts, CI/CD, security, observability, the works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for you listening, maybe you're super technical, maybe you're just getting started. We're going to try and make this clear. Focus on the useful knowledge without, getting too bogged down in the weeds.
Right. Focus on the takeaways.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The author's own starting point is pretty interesting. They admit they didn't know much AWS or Kubernetes initially.
Right.
And then, boom, within 2 years, they're doing complex stuff. That rapid learning journey, that feels very relatable, doesn't it?
Totally. We've all been there, I think, diving into something new in the cloud and just absorbing everything. And it's cool they decided to share that practical, hard-won knowledge.
Yeah, turning experience into a book. They even mention potential AWS costs like maybe $15 if you run through all the examples.
Oh, that's good to know upfront. Realistic expectations.
Definitely appreciate it. And what I thought was smart, pedagogically speaking, is how they start. They don't just jump into GitOps. They build up from like basic infrastructure concepts, how things evolved.
That makes a lot of sense. You need the why before the what, right? Understanding the history, the problems that led to things like GitOps gives you that foundation.
Yeah, context. And the overview mentions the book uses diagrams, code snippets, notes, screenshots to explain things. That kind of multi-pronged approach seems good for different learning styles.
Yeah, visuals and code examples side by side are super helpful for these kinds of technical topics. Makes it less abstract.
Okay, so let's get into the main thing, GitOps. The author positions it as basically a process where Git is your single source of truth for infrastructure.
Right. It's like an extension of DevOps principles, but specifically for infrastructure.
How so? Like the workflows are similar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have dev and ops converging around that Git repo, collaboration, automation. It's all there, but focused on managing your infrastructure configuration.
And the key piece, according to the book, for making Git that source of truth, it's storing infrastructure snapshots as Terraform state files.
We've talked about Terraform state before.
Yeah, might ring a bell for listeners.
So those state files, they capture exactly what infrastructure you have deployed. Version control them in Git, and bam, every change is tracked, auditable, reversible, just like application code.
Right, history and rollback. Makes sense. The book also apparently touches on push versus pull GitOps. Can you give us the quick difference?
Sure. Push-based. Changes in Git trigger a pipeline that pushes updates to the infrastructure.
Okay.
Pull-based. You have an agent inside your cluster or environment that pulls the desired state from Git and makes the live infrastructure match.
Got it. Pulling from within. Okay, moving to the tools AWS setup, basic Terraform deployments. The book covers that initial ground, reinforcing the state file concept.
Standard foundational stuff.
Yeah. The overview mentions structured explanations and a table summarizing key Terraform commands. Anything stand out there?
Well, the book apparently notes that the core Terraform commands themselves are actually pretty few and simple. Plan, apply, destroy, But, and this is the key point, the overview picked up, the output from those simple commands can be huge. It reflects the complexity of what Terraform is actually doing under the hood with AWS.
So the command is simple, the work it does isn't. And the author apparently cuts down those long outputs in the book examples.
Seems like it, yeah. To avoid overwhelming people who aren't used to seeing screens and screens of resource changes. But they still stress that a lot is happening.
Good balance. It shows the abstraction Terraform provides.
Exactly. Hides the nitty-gritty API calls, lets you declare what you want.
The overview also mentions Terraform modules. The book compares them to functions in programming. Why is that a good comparison?
Oh, yeah, that's a classic analogy. Think about functions.
Yeah.
You write a piece of code once, give it a name, reuse it everywhere, right? Modules are like that for infrastructure. You define a standard setup, maybe a web server configuration or a database setup, package it as a module, and then you can reuse that pattern easily across different parts of your infrastructure or even different projects. Keeps things tidy, avoids repeating yourself.
DRY, don't repeat yourself. Got it. And back to those state files again. The book really hammers on how critical they are.
Absolutely critical.
And it talks about storing them securely, like setting up a free Terraform cloud account. Why is that security so important?
Well, think about it. That state file is the map of your live infrastructure as Terraform sees it. If you lose it or it gets corrupted, Terraform loses track. It might not know what exists, or it might try to create duplicate resources. It can get messy fast.
Okay, yeah, bad news.
And Terraform Cloud gives you secure storage, versioning, remote operations, and importantly, state locking.
Locking.
Yeah. So if two people try to run Terraform apply at the same time on the same infrastructure, locking prevents them from stepping on each other's toes and corrupting the state.
Ah, okay. Essential for teams. And the book explains organizing state in Terraform Cloud using workspaces like dev, prod, QA.
Standard practice, yeah. Keeps your environment separate. A change meant for dev doesn't accidentally break production. It's fundamental for managing risk.
Makes sense. Then there's automation. That DRY principle comes up again with automating Terraform using GitHub Actions and something called Terraform VCS.
Yeah, Terraform's version control system integration.
And the book apparently makes this sound pretty achievable, mostly about getting the right YAML files set up in GitHub Actions.
That's the beauty of tools like GitHub Actions. You define your pipeline Terraform plan on a pull request, Terraform apply on a merge to main, that kind of thing declaratively in YAML, integrate it with Terraform Cloud or Terraform's VCS features, and your infrastructure changes can happen automatically based on Git commits. Less manual work, fewer errors.
So the author's core argument about GitOps seems to be, it's not just using Git for infrastructure code. It's applying the whole CI/CD pipeline concept to infrastructure.
That's the heart of it, yeah.
And continuous monitoring is part of that package too.
Definitely. It's the feedback loop. Store the code in Git, automate the deployment with CI/CD, and then continuously monitor the result to make sure it's healthy and matches the desired state. It's a cycle.
Gotcha. Now, the overview singled out the author's favorite chapter, deploying a Spring Boot app on AWS EKS.
Ah, the practical application.
Yeah, covering architecture, code, using Terraform to manage a PostgreSQL database alongside it. What's valuable about that kind of example?
It's super valuable because it connects all the dots. It's not just abstract infrastructure. It's deploying a real application, showing how Terraform manages the compute, EKS, the data store, PostgreSQL, probably networking. All together, it makes the concepts concrete.
And it mentions needing a domain name, understanding DNS Route 53.
Essential piece. Can't access the app without it.
Right. And here's that weird little tidbit the overview mentioned. The author connects DNS port 53 to the protein P53, because they're both 53.
Yeah, chuckle slightly. Okay, that is random, but memorable, I guess.
Maybe, but the point is, DNS and Route 53 are crucial, even if the memory aid is unusual.
Fair enough. The core point about needing DNS knowledge is solid.
Then the book moves into security, secrets management, authentication, authorization, focusing on AWS Secrets Manager and EBS volumes.
Two key areas. Secrets Manager for handling database passwords, API keys, stuff like that securely, not hard-coding them.
Right, never hard-code secrets.
And EBS volumes. Well, they're versatile. Boot drives, data storage for databases, extra disk space. Understanding how to manage and secure them is important. The book also mentions explaining IRSA.
Yes, IAM roles for service accounts.
Crucial for EKS. It's how you give pods running on Kubernetes fine-grained AWS permissions without baking access keys into your containers. Much more secure.
Okay, and the final chapter tackled observability. Lots of tools mentioned open source like Prometheus, Elasticstack, FluentBit.
The usual suspects, powerful tools.
And AWS's own OpenSearch. Plus CloudWatch alarms, Grafana for dashboards, and even command line ways to check workflows. Why is observability the wrap-up?
Because in a GitOps world where changes flow automatically, you need visibility. Is the deployment working? Is performance okay? Did that last automated change break something? Observability gives you the answers. Monitoring, logging, tracing it, closes that loop we talked about.
Right, the feedback. Makes sense. And something practical, the author provides base code for each chapter. That sounds helpful for learning.
Oh, yeah, huge help. Lets you follow along, try things out, build on the examples without starting from scratch every time.
And they include detailed cleanup instructions. Appendix A for manual deletion, Appendix B for cloud deletion.
Also very important. Easy to leave stuff running in the cloud and rack up bills. Good on the author for including that.
Yeah, responsible guidance. But there was one potential snag mentioned in Appendix C.
Oh.
Issues with the code on different operating systems, like it worked on native macOS for one chapter but needed Linux for others. They provide workarounds, but still.
The joys of cross-platform compatibility. Yeah, that can happen with infrastructure tooling sometimes. It's good they acknowledged it and offered solutions, though. Shows real-world experience again.
True. So wrapping this up for you, the listener, key takeaways from this overview. It seems like this book offers a really broad, practical path from cloud basics right up to advanced GitOps on AWS.
Absolutely. It covers the key pillars: infrastructure as a code with Terraform, automation with GitHub Actions, security, observability, all grounded in the author's own learning journey. Seems like a solid resource if you're looking to implement GitOps on AWS.
So here's a thought to maybe mull over. These GitOps principles, version control, automation, managing state declaratively, where else could they apply? Beyond just cloud infrastructure, maybe in your own work, maybe even parts of your life where you want consistency, an audit trail.
That's interesting. Yeah, anywhere you have a complex system you want to manage reliably and transparently. The core ideas are quite transferable.
And thinking about the author's journey, that quick ramp up from knowing little to implementing complex systems, what does that tell us about gaining expertise in general? The value of just diving in and doing.
It highlights the power of focused effort, hands-on practice, and probably sharing knowledge, like the author did by writing the book. It really accelerates the learning process.
Definitely food for thought. We'd love to hear your own learning stories or any questions this sparked. Do share them with us.
Yeah, please do.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive today.